Hi, my name is Paige Presley, and I am a yoga teacher based in Nashville, Tennessee. I first learned about the brain longevity training through an ad on social media. The algorithms were working well that day, I guess, and I was immediately attracted to the concept because I have several family members who are diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's over the last 20 or almost 30 years now. But what really drew me in was the well-rounded approach to prevention, including nutrition, exercise, stress management, and spiritual fitness. And perhaps the pillar that stood out the most to me, because of my own personal experience, is that of stress management. The role of stress, good stress, is to help build resilience, which in a cyclical way helps us better manage stress in future situations. Consider strength training, for example. It's stress on the body, yes, but it helps build the body's ability to move and to lift safely. And as a bonus, it helps with bone strength as well. And it's a key component of both physical longevity and long-term mobility, not to mention the mental benefits that were noted in the 2014 study on Hatha Yoga's impact on executive function. I think that was referenced in Module 6. Similarly, mental stress is, in manageable doses can help, in a way, train the mind and the nervous system to more efficiently and effectively process perceived threats. I mentioned that I'm interested in stress management because of my own personal experience, and part of that is the family history, but another part of that is intimate experience with stress and unrelenting stress. Years ago, I was in a series of emotionally abusive relationships. One was romantic, but most of them were relationships with my work or people at work. And I was too young to understand the impact that stress was having on my whole wellness. But over time, I realized that many of the health quirks, as I'll call them, were because of the chronic stress I was under. And that's when I found yoga. And now, through experience training and this curriculum in particular, I've developed tools and exercises that have helped me and many of my students in times of stress. So I currently teach primarily yin and restorative style classes. I often have a lot of busy professionals in my class, and that's something that is great because I too am a busy professional, so I can come to them with experience and education and give them their own set of tools that they can use in these situations. Something that I found that resonates with this particular group of students is addressing what happens in fight or flight, from the chemical and hormonal cascade triggered by a perceived threat to the way the muscles tense and prepare to engage. And I find that explaining that this is a very natural process, this is a very natural way that our bodies respond to stress, I feel like that helps depersonalize the experience and allows them to shift from a focus on what is happening to them to how do I move through it. So as a yoga teacher, I recognize that I cannot serve as my students' physician, therapist, or professional support system, but I can provide them a safe space and some educated background on how the body processes stress and how some of these research-backed methods for relieving stress will help them. Again, giving them tools for their toolbox. So I recommend for fellow yoga teachers that they study and have movements or postures or poses that help release what was prepared to engage or run. For example, I almost always find ways to release the psoas. We know that this is typically one of the first areas to tense up when there's a perceived threat. I jokingly say whether it's a real bear or the proverbial bear that is your work email. My favorite, though, to address this is a supported bridge. So using a block under the sacrum and adding a strap around the knees or around the thighs helps to give the body the support and the structure that it needs to just relax in the pose, which then allows the psoas to release and let go of everything that it is held on to. And in turn, it's releasing all of those, let's call them neurochemicals, that were triggering them to engage in the first place. That's just one of several examples, but I will say that that is one that my students have specifically mentioned as they're leaving class, that was their favorite. And at the beginning of every class, as many yoga teachers do, I will ask, are there any special requests? And my regulars will always ask for that particular pose. It really is. It has helped me for years now, and I find that it helps my students as well. Now, I will say this, word of caution, especially in yin and restorative style yoga, when you're lying still for prolonged periods, I find that it's really important to remind my students that the mind will still wander. It's an active organ. It will keep going, and we know, based on research, that the mind is attracted to negative thoughts. And we can easily get sucked into the whirlwind of thinking and to-do list making and ruminating, especially in times of intense, unrelenting stress. So I use various metaphors, but my favorite is treating thoughts like water in a stream. You notice its presence, you notice its movement, but you don't get in, you don't swim around in it. You just let it float on by. I tell them to do the same with their thoughts. Things are going to bubble up, things are going to pop into your mind, but just let it pass. So while my teaching is focused currently on a practice that prioritizes that stillness, I also understand that the body may need different things at different times. For example, some need more activity to move through stress, while others may need more meditation to calm the body and mind. And again, I'll reference what was mentioned in Module 6 about the impact of movement, the impact of a more active style of yoga, the impact that it had on cognitive function. That is a really important thing to recognize, and I like to remind my students of this as well. We sometimes, where appropriate, will add small movements for those who need it. So even though my class is one that is based on stillness and finding calm in that stillness, I do offer my students, especially the ones when I see them start to wiggle, I offer them the option for little tiny movements, whether it's shifting the rotation of the inner thigh, the windshield wipers, having this very intentional movement to help release what's going on in and around the hips. Sometimes it's a sort of modified flow. I will give them that option for a little bit of movement if that's something they feel like they need. So it's important as teachers to remain aware of what students need in class, but it's also important to remember that we're there to help them, guide them in their own self-awareness, to help them better tune into what it is that their bodies are asking for. And then that's another thing that I like to remind my students as we're going through class, that I may give them a pose, I may give them a movement, but if it's not something that their body's asking for, they're welcome to take some of these other options. So as I close, I'll share a thought for future research. Though this is a very robust program and the pillars are, again, things that resonated with me, especially with my experience, I am seeing a trend that has recently bubbled up related to somatic movement, which of course yoga is an excellent example of that. But for ARPF, I wonder if one of the pillars will or should evolve at some point to include research on this particular type of movement. So perhaps it's information on intentional movement outside of the yoga practice or outside of the yoga tradition that is also helpful in terms of releasing and moving through stress. These things could complement a regular yoga practice and, of course, the healthy diet, regular exercise, and a fulfilled spiritual life as well. So thank you for this program. I feel like I have a lot that I personally am taking away, but a lot of tools that I'm able to share with my students, which I really appreciate. Thank you.